Good morning and a huge welcome to New Life Church live stream. My name's Sam and it's great to be together this morning wherever and whenever you're joining us. If you are live, please drop your name in the chat. I see there's quite a few people already saying hello. It's a great way to engage throughout the message and everything that we're sharing this morning. I'm really excited that Richard is going to be carrying on our series called Miracle Grow, looking at the things in our lives that God can use to grow our faith. And if you haven't seen the first two episodes in the series, then you can catch those on our YouTube channel after you've listened to Richard this morning. Whilst you're on the channel, I really encourage you, if you've got young children, to check out the Superstars content that goes out every Sunday morning at 9:30. And it's been really great just seeing in the background more and more people engaging with that content. We've had some recently extra subscribers on the channel, so welcome if you're joining us for the first time. It's really great to be journeying along together. As well as our YouTube channel, you can find out more about New Life Church on our website, which is nlcletchworth.co.uk, and there's a contact link in there. You can go and reach out to one of the team who would love to engage and connect with you further. I'm sure that we're all looking forward to tomorrow with some of the restrictions hopefully being eased to make meeting up a little bit more straightforward and smooth. And we're really looking forward to when we can resume and get back to some in-person meetings. We're just doing some planning at the moment and really looking forward to sharing those details as soon as we can. So please watch this space. Information should be coming out very soon on that one. Just a reminder that our digital lounge, the foyer, will be open live on Zoom straight after the live stream this morning. It's a great chance to connect face-to-face, at least virtually, and say hello, discuss what's been shared in the message this morning. So I really encourage you to get onto that. The details for that Zoom call will be on at the end of the live stream from this morning. I really pray that as you engage and follow along, that you just hear God speaking to you, whispering to you what he wants to grow in your life. And that as Richard shares some real practical steps, that you would embrace those and see how you can apply those in your life from this day onwards. And just go on and share your reactions and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to engage as we go through. So buckle up, tune in, and give this your full attention. I'm going to hand over to Richard.
Hello, my name's Richard and I'm so pleased you can be here with us today. And as Sam said, we're carrying on with a series called Miracle Grow, where we're looking at how God builds up and grows our faith in him. And it's about trust. It's about how he does things and what are the main ways that he uses to actually build up our trust in him. And as I kick off this morning, I'm actually going to look at love and just a quote about love. And this is what it says when they're talking about somebody in love. Sometimes you may have heard people say this: they're in love with being in love. Have you heard that? It's like somebody is so taken with the experience of being in love, that feeling, that whole excitement, anticipation, whatever it is, the whole newness of it all, that actually their focus is actually all on that. And it becomes very self-absorbed. Actually, that type of love doesn't really grow anything in you other than self-absorption, because true love is always directional. It's always loving someone. It's always coming from you to someone else. And that's one of the, I'm going to look at 4 key factors about faith before we look at our particular aspect of how God grows our faith today. And the first of those is that faith is directional. I think sometimes as Christians that there's a temptation to think that we're supposed to put our faith in faith, a bit like somebody loving love. And somehow faith isn't an arrow pointing to somebody else, it's a box we're supposed to fill up. And we imagine that we have to grow our faith in some sort of way. And actually what we're doing when we're doing that is we're putting faith in faith, which is never what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to put our faith in someone else. We're supposed to put our faith in God, because faith is directional, and faith is there as the key way that we grow our relationship with God. So we don't put faith in faith, we put faith in God. And that's the second thing I want to look at. Faith is directional, but faith is also personal. It's personal in that God takes me to a place where I have to trust him, where I have to step out and put my faith in him. Like at 10:20 this morning, before the cameras rolled this morning, I have to step out and put my trust in him. And you can't have faith on behalf of somebody else. I know sometimes God calls us to have faith as a community, but in this series we're thinking about how God grows our personal faith in him. So one is, it's something that I have to own, if you like, and I have to step out in faith. But the other thing is, like I say, it's directional. It's something that builds that relationship with him. And I'm going to ask Rosalind, my better half, to come and just assist me with a bit of an illustration, really just looking at our relationship with God. Now, is our relationship with God a little bit like the relationship you'd have with Boris Johnson? Have you seen him on the news clips? You know, when he's coming up to somebody, it's a quick elbow tap, just like that, isn't it? Is that your relationship with God? Oh, hi God, good to see you again. And off you go with your day. Is that your relationship with God? Or would you say it's a little bit more of a handshake? Great talk, God. See you again next week. Bye. Is that your sort of relationship? There's not a lot of faith there, though, is there? And it's faith that grows our relationship with God. What would it be like if we were putting faith in one another? Or actually, let's say Rosalind's God, and I'm putting faith in him. What you need there is a rescue grip. You know a rescue grip? Where you're actually holding onto each other like that. It's secure, but actually you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And when you've been asked to do that, and God takes you to a place where you put faith in him, and he's come through, and you've come the other side, and you know, I never knew that would happen. I never thought that would happen. What happens at the end of that? Do you say, whoa, that was amazing faith, wasn't it? I don't think you do. You say, what an amazing God. What an amazing God. You stepped out and pulled me through that. So faith isn't a commodity. Faith is directional. And faith is personal. Faith is the key way that we grow our relationship with God. Faith is also intentional. It's something we have to choose to do. I've got a couple of water bottles here. And I said to the amazing tech team who are the other side of the camera, what's the difference between these two? Well, more or less everything, really. But what I want to point out that is, if you put these bottles in a dishwasher, you put this one in and you get it out again, you end up with the same bottle. If you put this one in a dishwasher when it's empty, you end up with this. And that's because this is, I think it's called a thermosetting plastic, so it doesn't deform at high temperatures. But this one is actually molded and shaped when you put it into a high temperature. And I think when we go through the dishwasher of life, I think sometimes we think we're just like this. Oh, that's fine, I just go through life, doesn't touch me. But actually, if we're honest with ourselves, we know actually We're more like this. And Paul, actually one of the first Christians, puts it this way. He says, do not be conformed. Where are we? Sorry. I think we've got it on the screen. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So the question is not whether we're being shaped. We're all being shaped. But the question is, am I being shaped unintentionally? Or am I being shaped intentionally? And the key way that God shapes us is intentionally, is through these 5 areas we're looking at in this course, by stepping out in faith in him, by growing our relationship with him. Suddenly we can intentionally shape our lives rather than having them unintentionally moulded. And actually, if you look at the 2 things we've looked at in the series so far, we've looked at, Joel spoke about practical teaching, and looking at that area, how does that shape our lives? You may have heard the phrase that we live out the lives of the stories that we live. No, hang on a bit. Yeah, we live out the lives of the stories we live under. I don't know if you've ever heard that said before. I heard a guy called Pete Gregg say it once. We live out the lives of the stories we live under. Somebody said to me when I was quite young that I was incredibly amusing when I tried playing sport, and that actually stuck. So I became a bit of a sport comic. I would do the funny things, and I never really grasped that actually might not be my destiny as a sportsman. Well, I can't really say I've got a destiny as a sportsman, but it wasn't until my next door neighbour when I was in my 40s said, hey, do you want to learn how to play squash? And we went down and we learned how to play squash, and I found I could hit a ball with a racket. Actually, I could even win a few games, and I could really enjoy it. And I'd lived under that. I'd let that story shape my life for so long. And that's like a trivial thing, but there are much deeper things that people say to us. And one of the things when Joel was talking about practical teaching, shaping our lives when we step out in faith and actually do what Jesus said to do, some of that's practical doing, but some of it is actually practical rethinking. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. God says about you, you are my child whom I love. With you I am well pleased. Do you know that? Grab hold of it when you wake up in the morning. It's true. Even before you've done a thing in the day, God says to you, you are my child whom I love. With you I am well pleased. So we can be transformed in that way. Sam last week looked at our habits in life. And I don't know, there was a lovely sequence just at the end of his talk, which I really grabbed my attention, where he said you start with disciplines that become habits and they end up being joys. I don't know if you remember that bit. And I've heard somebody else, a guy called John Mark Comer, say that our habits cultivate our hearts, longings and loves. So the things that we get into a repetitive thing about doing actually start to shape us into the things that we love doing and long to do. And so that's another area where let's not be conformed to what the world says about us. Let's not be conformed to the habits it's trying to push us into. Let's be transformed by the renewing of our minds, seeing ourselves as God sees us, but also developing those habits and shaping our lives as in the way that is fruitful for God and fruitful for us. So, that was a slightly long thing about saying faith is intentional, but make sure it is intentional, because we're all being shaped. Humans are not this type of plastic. We're not immune to stuff. Humans are more like this type of plastic that is shaped. So make sure that what is shaping you well, and to choose intentionally that. Now, the other area that, those are the 2 things. I'm just going to go through the other 3 areas where faith God grows that faith in our lives. So we've looked at practical teaching, private disciplines. This week, we're going to be looking at we're going to be looking at productive serving, and we'll be looking at that in a minute. And the following weeks, we're looking at provocative relationships, and finally, we're looking at circumstances, critical circumstances in our lives. And one of the key things about all of these actually is that, interestingly, when you look at the life of Jesus with his disciples, in the accounts written by his followers in the New Testament, you see that all of these 5 areas are really key areas that Jesus used in growing faith in his discipleship. So practical teaching, we know that with his teaching that he brought. Personal discipline, Sam talked about that, Jesus speaking about it and doing. And serving, we're going to be looking at that today. Relationships, he chose a whole disparate group of people to follow him, absolutely not the sort of people that would normally get on with each other. They were in provocative relationships. Why? So it could build faith in him. And he took them through circumstances that were incredibly challenging. Why? So they could build faith in him. So we've talked about faith being directional. It's towards somebody. We've talked about faith being personal. It's our choice, and it's something that shapes our relationship and grows our relationship with God. We've talked about it being intentional. It's something that we choose to do. So rather than being unintentionally shaped, we're intentionally shaped. But faith is also foundational. It's something that is essential in our relationship with anybody, actually, but in our relationship with God particularly. And it's because another word for faith is trust. And the original breakdown in our relationship with God, which is recounted right back in the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, with that creation story, what actually broke the relationship with God, it wasn't that Adam and Eve were naughty and they broke the rule and you shouldn't have done that. What it was their trust in God had been corrupted. Did God really say that? Can you really trust him? Well, actually, no, maybe we can't. Actually, maybe we could do a better job ourselves. Why don't we try it? Let's try that thing. And they take that fruit. The thing that broke the relationship with God was a lack of trust. And it severed it. It broke that relationship. And ever since, God has been wooing us back. He's been saying to us right the way through the whole story and all those 66 books in the Bible, and right the way through to Jesus coming, saying, trust me, put your faith in me again, trust me. Because that's what brings us back. So faith is foundational to our walk with God. It's foundational to our life as human beings, but it's foundational to our life and our walk with God. So today, we're looking at productive serving. And what are we talking about like that? This is something that's going to happen in everybody's life as a Christian. And it's not something necessarily that will happen when we're doing the elbow tapping, hand shaking walk with God. But actually, when we're walking with God, there'll be a time in our lives when he takes us, as it were, to the edge of the cliff. And he says, follow me. And we'll say, are you sure? And I don't know if you've experienced that. I'm sure you have. I read this book. Don't know if you can see that. It's a book by a guy called John Ortberg, and it says if you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat. And I read this 2005, and this is about doing just that when God takes you to the edge of the cliff and he says, okay, follow me. And it really challenged me, actually, to step out of my comfort zone. I think as a Christian, I'd been more of a handshake Christian rather than a rescue grip Christian. And he said, no, I want you to trust me. I'm involved with a charity called Choice. We have a pregnancy advice centre here in Letchworth. And at that time, we were looking for somebody to do schools work because there's some really good material that CARE had produced to go into secondary schools and primary schools about sex and relationship education. And we thought, yeah, let's go for it. Let's find somebody young. That's great. And we spent about 18 months going around looking for somebody cool and young and all the rest of it. Couldn't find anybody. And then I read this book. I thought, right, okay, well, maybe you mean me. Okay, what I'll do, God, I'll go on the course and find out what it's all about, and then I'll make the decision, all right? So myself and Teresa, we went on the training course to run this program up in Northampton. And there's a lady called Rachel Gardner. I don't know if you ever come across her. She runs something called Romance Academy at the time. And she said something that touched me. She said, it's not about wearing cool clothes. It's not about being young and cool. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about your heart. If your heart is for kids, if your heart is that they are known and that you root for them, that's going to come through whatever your age, whatever you're wearing. That's what they'll see. And that really touched me because, to be honest, that's what was motivating me. I felt my generation had sold the next generation down short by a long way. And I thought we need to redress the balance and get in there and tell them about sexual relationship education and drugs and all that stuff, but also to tell them about their worth and who they truly are and how God actually sees them. It wasn't overtly Christian in that sense, but it was a worth-based program. Anyway, I came back out of that and took that step over the cliff. I mean, you may not think, is that a cliff edge? Well, it was for me, I can tell you. And I took that step over a cliff edge, and I was joined by Chris Croft, who you may know, Sue Biggins, and a guy called Mark Russell. And it felt like we went up to 30,000 feet in an aircraft, and we bundled out together in formation skydiving when we did our first session at St. Francis School. But that program rolled out, the team grew, we did have younger people join us. And we went into schools locally, Cambridge, Bishop Stortford. Thousands of young people got to hear about their worth, of who they are, how God sees them, that they are truly valuable. But that was definitely a step over the edge. And you'll find that in your Christian life. God will take you to a place where failure is what you think is going to happen. And when you look at yourself, all you see is your inadequacy. And when you look ahead, all you see is fear. But God will say, follow me. And I don't know if maybe you're in that place right now. But that's certainly the place that we're going to look at in our passage today, taken from one of the people that was there, Matthew. Wrote in his biography of Jesus in chapter 14 about this time of productive serving in their lives. So I'm just going to read that now. And this event occurs just after Jesus has heard that his cousin, 6 months older than him, one of his best mates in childhood, had been killed, murdered by Herod, who was the ruler of that area of Galilee. So Jesus decides to move out over the lake, go to a quiet place with the disciples. I mean, he's grieving. He might also have felt threatened, perhaps, because he might be the next on the list, if you like. So, as soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat and went to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. I mean, that says a lot about Jesus' heart for people, doesn't it? That evening, the disciples came to him and said, and just think about the disciples actually, on this trip, it's a little bit of a sort of sabbatical trip, a bit of a vacation. They're heading over the lake with Jesus. Let's go to a quiet place. Cool, I like that. Yes, let's do that. The crowd's there. Oh my word. Jesus is healing. Oh my word. And then it's evening. They're getting a bit hungry, and the crowd's getting hungry too. So what do they say? That evening the disciples came to him, Jesus that is, and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "That isn't necessary. You feed them." I mean, talk about being taken to the edge of a cliff and looking over it. I mean, this is absolutely what's happening to the disciples. Jesus is saying, "No, I'm not going to do that. You can feed them." He doesn't even say, "I'll feed them, that's fine. Just watch." He doesn't say that. He says, "You feed them." I don't know if you've heard Jesus say that to you, and you look at a situation and you think, "Oh my word, there's such a need there. It's massive. Don't know what to do about it." Have you heard Jesus say that to you? You feed them. What? How do you respond to that? That's crazy. So, in this place we feel two things, and I've made reference to it already. We feel fear. We feel fear, well, what if? What if? I mean, that's crazy. Don't be daft. What if it all blows up in our face? What if I fail? What if I'm seen to be stupid? What if? And also inadequacy. We look at ourselves and we're only too well aware that we don't have the resources to meet the need. I mean, this need with the disciples was huge. So what do the disciples say? They say, "We've only got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. I mean, essentially, family-sized packed lunch. And there's 5,000 people there. This is not multitude-sized resource. You could be saying there, and that's what we do, don't we? When we're faced with a situation, we look at ourselves, and essentially we only see a packed lunch when people need a feast. I know that. I know that in my life. I know that doing this stuff, coming out here, you look at yourself and you see, well, I only see a packed lunch. And you guys need a feast. So what does Jesus say to them? He says, "Bring them here. Bring them to me." And that's what he always says. Okay, you've only got a packed lunch. Bring it to me. Okay, you're scared witless about what will happen. Bring it to me. Okay, it didn't work out well last time. Bring it to me. Okay, there's not enough of you to do this. Bring it to me. And the key thing in all of this is that we do what only we can do, and God will do what only he can do. That's the fundamental functioning of faith. When we're on that cliff edge, there is something we can do. We've got a packed lunch. Okay, we can bring that. Let's use that. Let's try that. I've got a broken down laptop. Let's bring that. Let's try that. I've got some skill with tech, but not very much. Okay, let's bring that. Let's work with that. I did used to play the guitar when I was a kid at school. Okay, let's bring that. Let's work with that. Let's bring that. And when we do what we can do, God will do what only he can do. Because actually when we bring those things, that's an expression of faith. And that's what happened with the disciples. And by the way, we can miss this in the story. We think the story is about 5,000 people being fed. But I tell you, those 5,000 people went home and probably forgot about it the next day. But those 12 disciples never, ever forgot this. That's why he wrote about it in his biography of Jesus. He never forgot this day. And why is that? Because they did what only they could do. But then God did what only he could do. He told the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up towards heaven and blessed them, and then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples, who distributed it to the people. That's them doing all that they could do. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. About 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children. And like I said, do you think the disciples ever forgot that day? Because Jesus, this isn't accidental. This wasn't like, oh my word, what are we going to do about this? This was intentional on Jesus' behalf. He intentionally put the disciples into a place where he said, okay, you feed them. And he wasn't trying to wind them up. He was trying to build their faith in him by productive serving. I think sometimes when we see it, productive serving, we don't catch the magnitude of it. It's actually stepping out with our limited resources and finding God stepping in with his unlimited resources. That's what it's about. This was a faith mission for Jesus. He wasn't there to feed people. He was there to nourish the faith of those 12 people, because sometime soon he was going to hand the whole thing over to them. And if they didn't have faith in him, faith in God, it wouldn't work. It's not going to work. So the story carries on. Immediately after this, and why does it say that? It says these two events are intricately linked. They're actually one story. And we divide them up, but they're actually one story. Immediately, it wasn't 5 weeks later, it wasn't sometime later. It was immediately after this. And what does he do? Well, he sends the disciples straight away into another out-of-their-depth situation. He basically sends them across the lake into the middle of a storm, and they're rowing against the wind and getting nowhere. So I'm just going to read that to you. I don't think it's on the screen, but I'll read it. Jesus insisted his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I'm here." And then you get the idea that Peter is like joining the dots here. Peter's remembering, we had the packed lunch. Jesus said, "Bring them to me." When we brought them to him, something extraordinary happened. Now just hang on a minute. And Peter says this. Peter calls out, "Lord, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." Now this is the thing. If Jesus actually says to him, "Step out of the boat walking on the water," his faith isn't in himself. His faith is on Jesus, who's asked him to do it. Now, this whole thing about being on the cliff and going over, we don't disband Jesus and look for cliff edges and walk over them. It's something that God actually takes us to. And Peter's got that. If Jesus says to you, "Yeah, come on, trust me, bring me what you've got. Let's do this together," that's a whole different scenario than just trying to find cliff edges to step over. Anyway, so Peter's got that, you see. He says, "If you tell me to come," and Jesus does. He says, "Yes, come." So Peter does what he can do. He knows how to get out of a boat, trusting Jesus to do what only he could do. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" You see, it was all about faith. Just like the feeding of the 5,000, this stepping out of the boat reminds me of that book that I read. It's all about stepping out with our faith in God and him stepping in. So these two incidents occurred in one amazing day, a day when Jesus grew the faith of his disciples, and when they learnt that if they did what only they could do, he would step in and do what only he could do. So what about us? Well, I can guarantee, as you are a follower, if you're a follower of Jesus, he will take you to that place. He will take you to that cliff edge and say, follow me. Just bring what you've got and let us go with this together. And when we do what only we can do, God will do what only he can do. Well, I'm wondering if, as I'm talking about this, there's something, you know just what we're talking about. You know it's actually right in the front of your walk with God. You know maybe it's a change of job. Maybe it's a house move. Maybe, I don't know what it is, but you'll know what it is. Is this the time to just not say, well, I've only got a packed lunch. What can that do? But actually just bring what you do have. Do what you can do and allow God to do what only he can do. You know, we're surrounded in this church by people who've done that. I think sometimes we can think there's like super Christians whose life is just, woo, I can do anything, and me. It's not like that at all. We're all like me. Every single one of us has to take a step of faith. None of us is totally adequate in ourselves. I mean, I think of the tech team here arrayed in front of me who you can't see. Every single one of them has had that challenge to step out. Every Sunday coming out, that's challenging, that's difficult. The complexity of what they're doing. It's like when they look at themselves, it's just a packed lunch. But somehow, when they bring that in trust of him, God creates a feast for you and beyond. I think of Joel and Beth. 12 years ago in Coventry? God says, hey, go down to Letchworth, lead a church, give it a go. Were they church leaders? No, they weren't church leaders. Had they ever led a church? No, they'd never led a church. What did they do? Forget that. Not going to do that. No, they didn't. They saw that, they saw the one who held their hands, and they stepped over. And look what's happened. And everybody, leaders in superstars, helpers in superstars, people doing this hospitality, people doing TLG, people doing make lunch, all these different things, and that's just a few of them, are people who've not been put off by their inadequacies or their fear, because they've looked to the one who's called them and they've taken that step. We're just going to listen to a song, and a few years ago now, 3 years ago I think, I joined the leadership team here, and that was a big step for me. And I was just tinkering about with a radio I'd been given for my 60th birthday that had a Bluetooth thing, and I thought, oh, let's listen to Oceans, which was a song we're going to listen to, and it just spoke to exactly where I felt on that cliff edge and stepping over it. And if you're in that place, let God speak to you as we listen to this song together now.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. There I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand, and I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, whatever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made strong in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. Where oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine.
Hello again. I just want to really give you, just at the end, a really practical way of responding to what we've been listening to today. I mean, you may know exactly where Jesus is taking you and saying, bring it to me, and stepping over into that place of trust and faith in him. But I wanted to just sort of lay a table before you so you could see all the different places where you could do just that. And if you are a Church Suite user, if you could open up a tab on your PC and open up now, or probably preferably grab your phone, open up the app. And if you open up the menu, and we'll be showing you what it looks like on the screen, select My Fused and Teams Groups, and then it'll open up. Now previously this has just shown our midweek Fuse groups where we grow in faith and fellowship and relationship with one another, but we've now included our teams. These are places where we serve together and take that step of faith in serving God. And they're all there. If you scroll down the page, you can see all the different teams that are going on here at New Life and where you can step in and be involved. Now you may be thinking, I can't get myself logged in, I've forgotten my password. Well, special offer today only. If you go to our website, nlcletchworth.co.uk/fused, then you will get to that same, you'll see that same page. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see our Fuse groups, but you'll also see all the teams as well. So there's the worship team, the hospitality, make lunch. You can see it there. Why don't you take a look at those? Each one of those descriptions tells you about the heart behind that area of serving. And if that resonates with you, why not take a step to find out more? And if you click the sign up button, it's something that you're doing to explore that whole area of serving. It's not necessarily signing you up for the rest of your life. It's just saying, hey, I want to find out more. And the person, you'll get a confirmation email, but the person who is heading that up will get in touch with you and let you know more. So why don't you do that later on today and just see if you're getting that tug. And you know, if God is calling you to someone, he keeps on. You get that feeling, like I did with that evaluate thing. But lots of other things too. And he will keep prompting you. Yeah, but. Yeah, no, not but. Just bring what you have and do what you can do and trust God to do what only he can do. Well, that's just a resource that's open there for you. It's on the website till tomorrow morning if you want to use it there, but it'll always be there on Church Suite for you to have a look. And if you're already involved in some of those teams, we haven't added current people at the moment, but we will be doing that. So I'm just going to conclude with a prayer. Father, I just thank you that your mission is to grow our faith and trust in you. And I thank you that you do that in lots of different ways, in what you say about us, through practical teaching, in the habits that you draw us into developing, in our growing, in our knowledge and relating to you, spending time with you, but also in these areas of serving, where we have to just take a step of faith. In our inadequacy, in our incapacity, we trust in your adequacy and your capacity. And I just pray, Lord, we pray for one another at those cliff edge moments in our lives. Lord, may we know you walking with us and taking us into an area of growing trust and faith in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for being with us this morning, and we're going to open up the foyer, and the details of that will be on the screen shortly. That will be in just the next couple of minutes. And next week, we're looking at how God uses provocative relationships to grow our faith in him. Really looking forward to hearing about that. Great to be with you, and have a great day. Bye.